Good evening. This is Bulls in Red. And today we're talking about the 5 biggest misconceptions about RB Leipzig. And you know what? Another El Plastico is looming. Ooh. Welcome to Bulls in Red. And here we are again, your RB Leipzig podcast in English. We are called Bulls in Red, and we're at home in Leipzig, and this one is made for you wherever you are on this planet. And today we had a little bit of snow, but it has disappeared already. So, Richard, good evening. How the devil are you?
Good evening. I'm good. As you know, I told you I had a day off today, so I'm very fine, well rested and prepared. Let's go.
Wonderful. Well, that's a good thing about it. So now at the end of the day, let's have a look at 2 topics. And the first one is, well, I like to call the 5 biggest misconceptions about RB Leipzig. And why am I looking at this? Well, somebody contacted us from the United States on Twitter. He's called Kyle B at PolishJabroni91. I'm not sure if I spelled this correctly, pronounced this correctly, so please forgive me. Kyle was actually in Leipzig a couple of months ago, and he attended one of the games, and he was in Sector D, sort of where I used to sit, and seemed to love it. And towards the end of last month, towards the end of October, there were a couple of news items about RB Leipzig, and I think this was following when Jürgen Klopp was announced to join Red Bull in January next year. And they claimed that RB Leipzig is the most hated club in the Bundesliga. Can you believe that, Richard? Or is that news to you?
I always thought it was Bayern Munich. I'm really surprised. The most hated club in Germany and the most beloved club too is Bayern Munich.
And you know what? That is true. I'll come to that a little bit later. So I was thinking about, of course, we have an opinion, and that opinion is always evolving. And I found an article on a website, and that website is actually made in Florida, and it's probably been around for quite a while. It's called worldsoccertalk.com. And one of the authors is called Christopher Harris. And Christopher Harris actually also attended one of the matches recently, well, a couple of months ago in Leipzig. And on the 28th of October, he published this article called 5 Biggest Misconceptions About RB Leipzig. And I'd just like to take you through this because it's really interesting. And it touches on the point that Kyle has raised. So let's go into the 5 biggest misconceptions. And the first one actually is Germans hate RB Leipzig, and it seems to be true because if you listen or if you look at social media, the crowd which claims to hate RB Leipzig is loud. But then again, a lot of people who may not be in the majority and publish something on social media are quite loud. It all depends on the algorithm and the owner of the platform, I suppose. One can be forgiven to think that, and certainly the noise is there. But there was a study conducted in 2024 called the 2024 Nielsen study, and that actually revealed that RB Leipzig is the 7th most liked Bundesliga club in the country. Not number 18, but number 7. That's quite interesting. It's also interesting, it looked at the company RB Leipzig is in when it comes to most disliked clubs. And we're as much disliked as the likes of Bayer Leverkusen, Werder Bremen, VfL Wolfsburg, and Borussia Mönchengladbach. And what I found interesting as well, and I kind of noticed that as well in the city, or also when you venture out to the surroundings of Leipzig, there's more and more RB Leipzig merch appearing. People get a bit more courageous. And outside the Leipzig region and even outside Saxony, RB Leipzig is the most liked club, outstripping Bayern Munich. And the study also reveals that, and that's quite funny, Bayern Munich is the most liked club, but also the most disliked club. So they have both. So you're right there. So in that regards, Germans hate RB Leipzig. Well, there's always somebody who hates something. But these people don't seem to be in the majority. Number 7 out of 18, I don't think that is so bad for a club which is only 15 years old and came in a different way into the Bundesliga. Second misconception is foreigners hate RB Leipzig too. And this is something I couldn't understand anyway. But in this survey, it also said that RB Leipzig is, outside of Germany, the third most liked club, only beaten by FC Bayern München and Borussia Dortmund. And that, I think, is even bigger, especially for Red Bull. And we talked about this in our last episode a little bit, the international exposure. That's why it is so important. And I think that's not in the article, but I think the regular appearance in the Champions League and also to the hopefully later stages, later rounds, last few rounds helps. Now we're not there yet, but at least we're there all the time and we seem to be appearing on a good international stage. But it also helped that RB Leipzig won 2 domestic cups in 22 and 23, plus the Super Cup in a really good manner. And I still love that Olmo goal of one of those. And it also points to the fact that RB Leipzig has a very multicultural team. And I counted 11 nationalities. And then there are some Germans as well. So there are 12 nationalities. And this is interesting. And I can kind of confirm that because when I lived in the UK and you had German players with an English team, and in that case it was Michael Ballack, for example, with Chelsea, I took more of an interest in Chelsea. Before that, never really noticed them. And it also works the other way around. If I look at our ex-players like Kunku, like Guardiol, like Schobo, you take an interest in Liverpool, City, Chelsea, and even Spurs with Timo Werner. So this is very true. I can definitely understand that. So in that regards, foreigners hate RB Leipzig too? I don't think that is true either. The third biggest misconception is the club has no fan culture. Now, from a German point of view, we can argue about it, and definitely a traditional point of view. But the author of this article, Christopher Harris, actually spent some time in the RB arena, and he attended some games, and he concludes that RB Leipzig fans may not be as loud or aggressive as the ultras of, for example, of Eintracht Frankfurt, but RB Leipzig fans certainly are able to create an electric atmosphere in the stadium. And he did note the Sector B crowd, the home supporters behind one of the goals, following different chants and celebrating with different chants and songs, and we hear this on a regular basis. So he concludes, sorry guys, there is a fan culture. He also noticed something which is really interesting, and it's something RB Leipzig stands for. Remember last time we talked about RB Leipzig stands for a very good football experience, a fun football experience in a peaceful manner. You can come, doesn't matter what gender you are, what nationality or what age you are. You can come to a Leipzig game with family. It's very peaceful. And that's what he found as well. In comparison to a lot of other German stadiums, Bundesliga stadiums, the RB Arena or RB Leipzig fans are very friendly. It is a very friendly crowd. And what he also likes is that the stadium is in the center of the city. So it's in the heart of the city, so to speak. And it seems to be rooted inside the community, part of the community, and that makes it special. So even without RB Leipzig being around for 130,000 years and having that long tradition and being rooted and started in some time in the end of the 19th century, it still feels that RB Leipzig's part of the community. So whoever is doing PR for RB Leipzig and doing work with the community, hey, you deserve a pat on your back. And he points to a program which I wasn't aware of RB Leipzig, which is promoting the benefits of playing soccer to pupils in elementary schools. Though they don't brand it as RB Leipzig, so it is kind of neutral and indirect, but it's a very good program nevertheless. So that is the third biggest misconception. Number 4, attendances for RB Leipzig are poor. Now, I gotta be fair. He's just going by the numbers. And when he was in the stadium, it was pretty much sold out or was full. 45,000 people were there. The average attendance in numbers was, for last season, was 45,175. And we know that this seems to be a high number. The max capacity is 47,069. And we had a lot of gaps, a lot of empty seats. So number-wise, it looks good, but there's a discrepancy. And we talked about this before, but because when you're inside the stadium, it doesn't feel as crowded. Not sure this season, it does feel pretty full, but you still spot the gaps, even in games when it is announced that the stadium or the match is totally sold out. So either there are a lot of no-shows, people who don't care, who didn't sell on tickets, couldn't sell on their tickets. I don't know what it's a long discussion that we had, but nevertheless, it is a decent crowd every time. So it's not as if the stadium is half empty. I think it's at least 75, 80% full, maybe 85. It is decent. So attendance for RB Leipzig, no, they're not poor. They're pretty good, in my view as well. Here's the last part, and that is the most interesting part of this all. The holy grail of Bundesliga football. Number 5, the club has exploited loopholes in the 50+1 rule. Now, the 50+1 rule, what the heck is that? I'm going to try to explain the nutshell. It is a unique rule, and I think it was introduced in 1989, 1999 even, 1998. Now I'm getting around, third time lucky. I'm just guessing numbers here. No, 1998. And the purpose of this was to prevent investors taking over a club. The Bundesliga wanted to prevent that investors take over the majority of the club in terms of shareholders, and also be able to determine what the club's going to be doing. Let me explain that a little bit further. So the purest model of Bundesliga nostalgic club. An example for that is the Traditionsclub Borussia Mönchengladbach. Now that club is 100% owned by the club. There is no investor, there's no private equity. It's 100% club owned. What you see is what you get, 100%. Borussia Mönchengladbach also has more than 100,000 members, and everybody can be a member. Okay, there's certain values you need to adhere to, certain rules, but these are basic decent rules, nothing special. You don't have to come up with 50,000 euros to join the club, so to speak. So that is the purest form. And all these members, during, I think, at least one assembly a year, they're able to vote on certain items and make certain decisions on which direction the club is gonna go or gonna take. Now, there are other forms which are interesting as well. If you look at FC Bayern München, they have an ownership of 75% for the club, and that represents the members as well. And they have more members than Borussia Mönchengladbach. I haven't looked up the number. And the other 25% are split between 3 huge companies: Adidas, Allianz, which is insurance company, and Audi, who are a little bit in trouble at the moment. And they make up the rest of the 25%. The big thing here is the members representing the club have the majority of votes. That is the decisive thing. So even if the shareholders, the ownership of the club is different, and I come to that a little bit later, the sticking and the most decisive thing is, do the members have the majority of the vote? At least half plus one, that's the 50+1 rule. And does that prevent investors or companies to control the club? Interesting model is also applicable to Borussia Mönchengladbach. Now, Borussia Mönchengladbach has a certain entity form, company for running football. And in that company, the ownership is split between several companies. They make up 23%, including the club. And 67% are free float. That means they're publicly traded on the stock market. So, hey, hello, Red Bull, why don't you buy some shares? At least you own a little bit of that club, but maybe that club is not so profitable. Maybe Red Bull is not interested in that. Again, those members of Borussia Mönchengladbach have the majority of voting rights, and this is the decisive thing here. Now, I'd like to talk about the total opposite, and these are 2 clubs, Bayer 04 Leverkusen and Wolfsburg. They have members, and you can be a member of those clubs, but you have no voting rights, nothing whatsoever, because these 2 clubs 100% owned by a subsidiary of the company behind it. So in case of Bayer, it's the Bayer AG or PLC or SE in Europe. And in Wolfsburg, it's the Volkswagen AG. We're a little bit in trouble. And they do not adhere, or they do not follow the 50+1 rule. So actually, these should be the enemy, shouldn't be. Everybody should hate them. But nobody does. And you know why? Because these clubs have been around for donkey's years. And they claim they've done so much for the local community in terms of sport, not only for football, but all of other social projects or other disciplines. I'm missing the word here, So they have an exemption to the rule, and this will never change. In the case of Bayer Leverkusen, they can even have the company name in there. How dare they? They didn't have to think of aspirin or something. Well, other medications available as well, by the way. And then there's TSG Hoffenheim, our next opponent. And that's an interesting part as well, because this club has been around since 1899, but it took 109 years to get into the Bundesliga. And why was that? Because 20 years prior to that, some big investor, Mr. Dietmar Hopp, and by the way, we're going to release a matchday video, a really short one, but you can get a little bit more info there as well. Be sure to watch that. Anyways, Mr. Hopp has 96% of the club. The other 4% is owned by the club, but he used to have 100%. He used to have 100% of voting rights. He just given up his voting rights to the members. So up to the summer of this year, I think, TSG Hoffenheim didn't follow the 50+ rule either. And he put in so much money, and he was able to put in so much money into his club, because he's a co-owner and co-founder. So he's a co-founder of a company called SAP, and we all know SAP. But he put so much money in communal projects, social projects as well, that they got an exemption to the rule as well. But they only joined the Bundesliga 15 years ago. So this is quite fresh, to be honest, that exemption to the rule. So the 7,000 members that TSG Hoffenheim has have the majority of rules as well. So they are actually in line with the 50+1 rule. And then there is RB Leipzig. Now, on paper, RB Leipzig does follow the 50+1 rule, because the club is owned 99% by Red Bull and 1% by the club. Now, that club represents members, but those members are really exclusive. And not everybody can be a member, because Red Bull decides who's a member or not. And if you want to enter that club, you have to come up with a lot of dosh. And the funny thing is, maybe it's just coincidence, but I think every member has some sort of link to Red Bull, even works there. So the critics will argue, hello, on paper you follow the 50+1 rule, but in terms of voting rights and the majority of voting rights, this doesn't apply, because nobody knows what the voting regularities are. And second of all, well, if people work for Red Bull, they're not going to vote against it. And that is the sticking point. This is what people mean, that RB Leipzig has exploited the 50+1 rule. If they have, if you want to interpret that way, and I think you can, okay, so be it. But I've mentioned at least two other clubs, like the likes of Bayer 04 and Wolfsburg, who definitely exploited the 50+1 rule or don't even bother to follow it. So either the same rules apply to everyone or allow exemptions. That's my take on this. So here we go. The 5 biggest misconceptions, and some of them explain, well, some of them are just myths, because like in other traits of life, minorities may be loud through social media and platforms that are owned by billionaires, for example. And when it comes to the ownership structure and voting rights, yeah, you can argue that way, especially if you look at it, Borussia Mönchengladbach, who's the purest model. But then Wolfsburg and Bayer 04 Leverkusen equally shouldn't be in the Bundesliga. That's just my take. And on top of that, quite personally, I don't care. I'm going there to watch football and to get worked up about that. And we will continue to look at this and maybe can give you a little bit more background how RB Leipzig is organized for everyone who's not involved, and especially the ones who don't live over here. Hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully that sheds a little bit of light into this question. And sounds like a presentation. I'm going to say, well, now I'd like to open the floor for further questions. Richard, what is your question?
Thank you for this story. I think
You're
it was full of interesting news for our listeners who are not used to the system that is established in German football. So no, I do not have any further questions because it's like my home city. I lived here all my life. And so I was involved in all those things around RB Leipzig, how they was founded, and when they had their first try back in 2006, when they tried to take over FC Sachsen Leipzig and their fan base was strictly against it. And so they had to look around for other options, right? Maybe this is something for another story one day.
Richard,
So-
we definitely should bear this in mind and keep looking into this, providing a little bit more background. Now, the next few weeks are going to be really busy, but I'm sure there'll be times again when we provide a little bit more background because I think this is extremely interesting. Is it okay if we move on to the next topic?
Of course.
Yeah. So, I know something special is coming up.
Introducing our next opponent, their ignorant check.
Ooh. Easy. Come on, say it. What's coming up?
El Plastico.
Go!
Once again, yes.
Exciting.
As you just explained it, two clubs that, at least from the point of view from the hard traditionalists and football lovers in Germany, are not eligible to exist.
I know. You shouldn't
Yeah.
even be there. That's
No, we
such
shouldn't
an
even-
artificial matchup.
Not even in the Bundesliga and not even as a club itself. So, El Plastico, what do you got? Hoffenheim, with a poor start into the season, somehow made it into the international business from the end of the last season. I think they finished 7th and are now in the Europa League. And so they had a tough start in the 2024-25 campaign, only 9 points for the first 10 weeks of football. And so they decided, or the club runners, the back office CEO, decided to part ways with coach Pellegrino Matarazzo. So we have to deal with their newest addition on the bench. Their new gaffer is Christian Ilzer,
But isn't
47 year.
Sorry,
Excuse me?
isn't that always the case? We are in a difficult situation, and we go to a different club who is struggling, and here they have a new motivation. And I'm sorry I interrupted you because you like to talk about the coach, and he's really interesting. So be quiet.
No, it's okay. So because you're right, it seems like those things happen to us more often than to other clubs.
Why
so that
us?
we are. So,
Why
us? I don't
always
know.
me?
So back to Christian Ilzer. It's an interesting gaffer, I think, because he came from the grassroots of football. He worked his up through the stages, through these different levels, from the just amateur leagues to the pro football divisions in Austria, and he had any time when he show up on the sideline, he had success. If you let beside this short stint with Austria Wien, I think it was 5 years ago, but when he coached Hartberg, he was successful. And the most successful time in professional football in Austria he had with Sturm Graz, our last opponent
I know.
in the UEFA Champions League next January.
You're going to be there, aren't
So
you?
yeah, excuse me?
You're going to be there, aren't you?
I'm going to be there, but that's a different story. So, but, that was his last club, and what he achieved at this club is quite remarkable. It's not only that he has taken over the Vormachtstellung in the Steiermark. There was the club from Hartberg who was a step ahead of Sturm Graz a few seasons, and then he managed to gain back what belongs to Sturm Graz, so be the number one. Not in Austria in total, but at least in their local group. And after that, he managed that. He took them to back-to-back cup wins. That sounds familiar. And last season, he was able to go all the way and becoming the Austrian champion. For the first time, I think it was in 10 or 11 seasons, I had to look it up, it was not Red Bull Salzburg who come away with the championship, but Sturm Graz.
Mm-hmm.
And his style of football he likes to see from his lads is a so-called power football. That was a term that I've read when I gathered information about this person, and that reminds me somehow of the Jurgen Klopp football, heavy metal football, power football.
Mm-hmm.
So always full throttle, high intensity, offense first, defense maybe second, but with at least a good balance. And I think why I do telling that is because I think all that we have seen from TSG Hoffenheim last season and the first 10 weeks this season under the coach Materazzo is now completely worthless to get any idea of what we are going to face on Saturday afternoon.
Great.
So not very helpful. But with the new coach on the sideline, I expect them to change their playing styles. Materazzo liked to play with the 3 defenders back or sometimes 5 defenders against the ball. And I don't expect that from their new coach because he prepared this 4-4-2 formation or 4-2-2-2, just like Coach Rose does. And we will see I expect that we're going to see some changes in positional groupings. And I would like to put out some names here. You surely know Anton Stach, this young man, it's not that young anymore, it's 26 already, who joined Hoffenheim from Mainz the season before. And I read an interesting thing now that because it was maybe not the particular reason, but one reason at least, that he had to think of a transfer back away from Mainz because he was told that the gaffer had another idea for him on the pitch, so not on his beloved number 6, so in defensive central midfield anymore, but more in the back 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in mind of Anton Stach, so he decided to go for a change and was there with Hoffenheim, and just to end up as a, guess what, central defender in their back 3. And
changed.
To be honest, I'm not that close enough to create a verdict about how he performed in this position he was not grown up with or not familiar with. But I think when I tried to put this interview or those sentences that I read from him and his statements that he likes to play in the defensive midfield and that is his preferred position, I think he will be lucky to see that there's now more opportunities for defensive midfielders with a new coach. And I remember him more visible back his time in Mainz,
Yeah, you really noticed him. You could really notice him.
You noticed him. And now if you're looking in the match of the day highlights or whatsoever, TSG Hoffenheim, it's a center midfielder, but nothing special anymore. So maybe he is going to find his way back into center midfield. Another interesting name is Alexander Prass, a 23-year-old Austrian guy who transferred to Hoffenheim before the start of the season. I guess from where he came from?
Klagenfurt.
In the near of Klagenfurt, correct. He came from Sturm Graz. So this is an interesting reunion because he worked with Christian Ilzer for 3 seasons, if I'm correct. And he was an essential piece in his 4-man midfield on the left side.
Okay.
And in Hoffenheim, because of that formation that Materazzo preferred, he wasn't there anymore. So he was more like a left winger or a wing back or something like that, and an outside defender on the left side. So in my opinion and in my recognition, it wasn't in his favor. So he couldn't play out all of his strength that he showed, especially offensively, during his stint in Graz. And The last name I would like to drop here is Marius Bülter. It's the 31-year-old veteran from Hoffenheim who joined the club as a striker. He came from Schalke.
I remember.
He played with Schalke in the second Bundesliga and in this 1 year Bundesliga of Schalke, and then he transferred to. Yeah, he was. Oh, he is still. But hear me out. And as soon as he joined Hoffenheim, there was no space for him because they had Kramaric, Maximilian Bayer, and Weghorst. So 3 offensive threats, and now there come this new guy, Marius Bülter, and obviously, at least in the eyes of Coach Matarazzo, he wasn't good enough to be a proper replacement in the first attacking row. So he tried something with him, and he had in mind, but thinking of would it be a good idea to put him into the left winger position, the position that Alexander Prass played now in the most recent games.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the performance of Marius Bülter wasn't that good as he has been during his time with Schalke. And now that the Weghorst and Bayer are gone, he is in the first row again. And guess what? He's working again. And he's a dangerous striker, 4 goals already in the first 10 weeks within this, weaker, mediocre squad in general. I think this is remarkably good. And don't forget about, the GOAT. Number 27. So in the eyes of the Hoffenheim supporters, it is the GOAT, Andrej Kramaric, with 5 goals. So, offensively, I think dangerous talent, and defensively, not so good. So 19 goals against already is, I think, second to last place in the league. And, they lost Kevin Vogt. I think it was in the winter break. In the last season, he transferred to Union Berlin, and the longtime defender Jonathan Brooks also left the clubs before this season. And obviously, they spotted this as their weak spot in their roster and tried to make a proper additions. But obviously, things, at least till now, did not work out as expected. So they had additions before the season started in the... Where are my notes now? Come on. They added Artur Chavez, and they added as well Robin Ranac for 8 million or 8.5 million each. So thinking, okay, this should be proper replacements, at least in the mediocre Bundesliga manner. But if you look at the playing time and the starting 11s, those 2 guys did not shine from the very beginning. So there's only 5 starts for Chavez and even 2 starts only for Robin Ranac. So it was still on Stach and Akpoguma and of course Kader Jabek and Tim Drexler. Tim Drexler is 19 years old. Okay, that's bloody hell. Is that young for a Bundesliga defender to keep this defense together?
That sounds familiar, like very young Bundesliga defenders. Sounds familiar to us.
Most likely individually, well, at least half a level weaker.
Okay.
So you have to assume that, because if they were stronger, if Tim Drexler was stronger, he would not play for Hoffenheim anymore, even with all maybe upside potential he got. So that being said, I think we will see a whole new TSG Hoffenheim, and it is reported that their ticket sales are going extremely well compared to other games in the recent weeks. So maybe we will see a sold out stadium, at least for the home sections, with a huge amount of euphoria. It's a new dawn. Let's go. And it's going to be dangerous.
Can I
Yes.
You one more question? I noticed on the TSG Hoffenheim website they introduced the new coach as well, but I think I read that he only had a few sessions with the team. So I think on the 18th he was introduced, on the 19th he kind of started working with them. So it's like 3-4 days he's able to work with the team. How much of an impact is that going to have? How much of his philosophy is actually going to come through already? What do you think?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. So if you're a new coach, and for a reason, not because the old one was the end of his contract and was just retiring, but he was fired, then you have to change something. So it wouldn't make no sense if you come there and say, okay, my predecessor did good stuff, and I would like to do the same thing and expect him to see other results.
Get your bags, pack your bags, and just go. To be honest.
Yeah. So, and that thing that the approach he showed in his recent stations or his recent clubs when he was in charge, I think he has a clear idea of what's going to work and what's not. And he wants to see it more quickly than not, if he's correct. And if things that work well in the Austrian Bundesliga are going to work well in the German Bundesliga. And he is at least as curious as we are if this is going to work. So I do expect that we'll see a lot of changes in the starting 11, and as I try to explain, especially in the formation, and hopefully for them, not hopefully for us, with a whole nother level of intensity.
Okay. So what can we do?
We have to show at least the same amount of intensity. It's going to be in a whole lot of Zweikampf is going on. Is something I once read about German football.
A lot of one-to-ones.
Yeah.
A lot of Zweikampf.
But the quote I read was really the German
Really?
word.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No,
Did I mess it up? Do we have to do it again?
No, it's fine. We just leave this as it is.
Zweikampf.
And it's gonna be, it's not gonna be something a game that will be able to control a lot. So because in the last games we showed lacks of ball possession and your ball and accuracy and
Definitely,
some easy mistakes in any part of the team, and you cannot expect that we are gonna see a whole lot of face from our lads, especially with this tiny amount of players that's still standing.
That's stubborn IL. It's really crazy. It keeps.
It is.
Some people sort of leave, but then we have new additions, and the latest additions after the international breaks, like, okay, just a very quick one. When I watched Germany and Hungary, that match, and then Benny Henrichs was on the ground, and next thing you know, Willi Orban is on the ground. He's taken outside. You're like, guys, take him off. They cannot play. They have to stay healthy. We're kind of panicking here. We're really in panic mode. Who's actually left? How many players are left?
I think there's 15.
15 without goalies.
Yeah, 15 without goalies, right. So
including the youngster from Schkeuditz,
Including.
Oh, we're desperate.
Including Nico Gebel, yeah.
But having said that, you told me before the podcast, if you look at the names, and maybe we come to that when, I don't know if you're ready to reveal your starting lineup, it's probably still some impressive names in there, to be honest.
It's still, yes. It's correct. Come on, let's go. Let's go for our starting 11 here.
Liebe Fußballfans, wir kommen jetzt zu unserer heutigen Mannschaftsaufstellung.
Ooh, let's go.
Okay, number 1 in the goal, easy. Peter Gulaschi rested, was not with the Hungarian national team, I think.
He wasn't even with the team, yeah?
No, he wasn't even.
No, he wasn't.
So, the back 4, okay. Henrichs, he is healthy, and that qualifies him. Orban,
yep.
Healthy too. Yep. Without any big mistakes in the match versus Germany.
To be honest, I liked Henrich's approach as well. He did some different things we didn't see in Leipzig, like breaking through the baseline.
We were talking about that. So it's obviously not on him that he is not able to find this way when he's with his club colors. No offensive here. Okay, next to Orban, I think we will see Klostermann. And then today in the press conference, Marco Rose said that Gerd Rieder is healthy again and will be introduced in the team training during the week. But I don't think that he is healthy enough to be a starter on Saturday.
Okay.
So I think we will see Seiwert in the back 4 here.
Oh, shit.
Okay, but midfield and striking unit is still good. So Campbell Haidara would my preferred approach here because you need experience. You need experience. Don't bring Vermeeren from the beginning. Although Hoffenheim has a young squad, but you need experience here because this situation with a new coach and a new approach and this euphoria.
And a hyped up
I
crowd.
talked about it. Yes, I think you need someone who knows how to slow things down a bit.
Oh, Campbell can definitely slow things down.
Yeah,
but he's good. He's been brilliant in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, of course. And Haidara is the one that is never shy of going with all he's got into a one-on-one, into a tackling, into a Zweikampf. And finally, Zweikampf. Nusa, Baumgartner, Schesko, and Openda are going to score. So one of them or two of them are going to score 2 goals for us.
All of them, please.
And we are very likely going to concede 1. So I guess we're going away with a 2-1 win here.
I'm going to join you with that call, 2-1 win. I'm not over optimistic, but you told me also before the podcast it's our cup final. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, the upcoming weeks. I think it's 8 games till Christmas. Gonna be hard, especially with this thin amount of players still available. And, we have now this game, Hoffenheim. The next game, I think it's Wolfsburg. Then it's Frankfurt or Kiel. I'm not sure about that. But I think, the time to gain points is now in the league. And don't think about Inter Milan on Tuesday. Okay, just put this thing away here. Need 3 points for the league, for the qualification for the UEFA Champions League. So please throw everything on the pitch that you've got. Don't think about saving some amount of energy for Tuesday. That's not necessary. We're going to lose there anyway. So please, lads, show us what you got. Show us all your intensity level.
And I think another important game will come up in the cup competition. It would be great to stay in there and beat Eintracht Frankfurt, but that's going to be as hard as heck, if they don't. If they're still in that same never. You're going to say, yeah, you did? Unbelievable. Yes. That seat usually is empty.
Yeah, but now it's not.
All right.
It's my name on it.
I think we might need a lot of alcohol that night. Anyways, well, let's keep our fingers crossed.
I got my Christmas party from work just before. So I'm going to be in a good mood anyhow.
Okay, so you have a head start. I'm going to think about that. How am I going to compete with that? Anyways, let's keep our fingers crossed for Saturday. Hopefully, the last bull standing will give us victory. And TSG Hoffenheim is not as sorted as they might think they are. Please, guys, just do your stuff. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. And thank you very much, Richard. I know I usually say that later, but this has been Both on Red, RB Leipzig podcast in English, from Leipzig, from the heart of Leipzig, to you wherever you are on this planet. Do make sure you watch our matchday video as well. We're going to post that later on Twitter as well. It's going to also be published on YouTube. And our episodes are also available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and Co. You can leave a comment there on your favorite platform. You can get in touch with us via email. The email is podcast@bowsandred.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and soon some other outlet as well. We'll let you know when we actually start. There's going to be a quick episode on Sunday, Monday probably, just ahead of the match at Internazionale Milano. You guys have a very good weekend. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. And all I need to say now is, auf geht's, Leipziger Jungs.